Welcome. You're listening to Druthfully and you're watching Druthfully Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Drew, where I'm transforming perspectives one Druth at a time. Well, today, I hope something is shared throughout this entire conversation that will have you to reflect and that it will resonate with you and embrace your own perspectives with courage and authenticity. Now, today's conversation, it's a reckoning. It's raw, it's personal, and it's steeped in the kind of truth that doesn't whisper, it reshapes. I'm sitting down with a woman whose journey speaks beyond trauma and into triumph, Caralyn Dreyer. She's a writer, researcher, mental health advocate, and mother. But above all, she's a mirror for what survival, faith, and healing can look like when you keep going, even when nothing makes sense. Caralyn, I am so grateful to have you on this podcast as my very, very, very first guest. I'm excited, but I'm grateful. But I want to start this, okay? This is what I want to do. I want to ask you this question. How are you feeling stepping into this space with me today?
I am doing fabulous today. I had like a nice relaxing morning. I'm like Mary Poppins in my backyard. Like I feed the birds and I sit out there and I talk to the little chipmunk that lives in my backyard. So I'm good today. I hung out with my son. So I'm in a good
Do you touch the
today.
trees and stuff? Did you walk on the grass?
I'm not a tree hugger. Nor do I like roll around in the grass or anything.
Okay. Well, that's
I used to when I was a kid.
But now you stopped, huh? You got allergies?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
I do have bad allergies.
Really? So you itching stuff?
Yeah.
You be itching and carrying on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's fine. So let's go back. Not to re-traumatize you, but to understand the depth you've walked. What did survival actually feel like in your body, in your mind?
Oh, well, I think probably like a good way to go about this is to maybe do like kind of like a vague timeline, because the more I tell my story, the more I realize I was in some kind of survival mode, I think during like childhood through like adolescence, because I had a lot of issues I was dealing with. So I grew up in a predominantly white community. I'm adopted. I'm half Black, half Korean. So I had a lot of issues with identity. I dealt with bullying. I had someone call me the N-word in elementary school. I was bullied because of my features. You know, I have fuller lips. My teeth were they were a little jacked up as a kid, I'll admit, but it didn't warrant me being teased, but I was teased. I was called like buck teeth, blubber lips. This was on the school bus. So right off the bat there, like I'm having to survive childhood, but not in a way of like, you know, this boy's picking on me because he likes me. It was like deep stuff. Having somebody tease me because of my skin color or my features, and just feeling like I stuck out so much was the development of like social anxiety. I truly believe when it was Black History Month, I kid you not, all through elementary school, I dreaded that month. I was the only brown girl in pretty much, I want to say almost all of my classes in elementary school. So when it was Black History Month, I felt like all the kids were staring at me. And I'm sure they weren't. I don't know if they were or not, but I started to develop such a complex like around my skin color. And even going to the store with my father, since I'm adopted, I don't look like my parents. My adoptive father is Caucasian. He's Dutch, hence my last name Dreyer. That's obviously not a very ethnic name, but So when I would go to the store with him as a kid, I would think that outsiders would find it a peculiar situation with a brown girl and a white guy. And I would think, like, what if they think he kidnapped me? And couldn't have been older than like 6 or 7. So when I look back at that stuff now, like literally having to survive going to school every day, being out in the community, I felt better when my whole family was there because I didn't feel like I stuck out as much. But if it was just me and my dad, I just felt like everybody was looking at me. So I think survival mode started a lot sooner than what I really realized. And then we go into middle school and high school. Adolescence is like Tortureville. You know, you're going through puberty, have boyfriends, you have breakups. I had a guy break up with me in high school because his dad didn't like that I was a different skin color. So with that type of stuff, and then still feeling like I stuck out because of my skin color, this is part of the reason, but I developed an eating disorder. It was a combination of like anorexia and bulimia. So I would purge, but I would also like restrict calories. And this started end of high school or end of middle school all the way through high school. Cause I'm like, I don't want to be the brown girl and then also be overweight, which I totally had no weight issues. But because of the way I started to view myself the way the bullies viewed me, or the way people who didn't understand different races viewed me. And I slowly had like the worst self-worth and self-esteem that, mind you, this started in childhood. So now that self-esteem just gets lower and lower and lower the older I get. And so as I got older, the survival mode feeling was more palpable. Like I noticed myself keeping busy all the time. I definitely, when I'm in survival mode, my anxiety levels are heightened. So just pretty much any little trigger or anything can kind of send me into like a little bit of a spiral. So survival has changed as I've gotten older in the terms of like I notice more physical reactions to that, just like being tired, exhausted, not having the energy to like maintain friendships, things of that nature. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, because it sounds like it was a weight. You know, your survival skills or tactics, it was a weight upon you, a kind of betrayal, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a betrayal to a version of yourself that wants to come through. I guess I want to say that. Yeah. You know, were there days feeling numb was easier than being present?
You know what? Looking back, I think when I was younger, we'll say like in high school, I had a lot of major things happen for me. And so, for example, my grandmother passed away. I saw her literally dying in the hospital. I had to pay my last respects. Never did grief counseling or anything. The high school that I went to was in a rural area, so there was probably like 1 to 2 students every year that would die in car accidents. And a couple of times they were people that I knew. So I felt more. I can remember myself crying more and like really feeling my emotions a lot more than when I was an adult. So I think over time I developed this skill of numbness. Well, you don't develop it per se, but because of the things that I went through, that was a coping mechanism to just numb myself to whatever was going on. So it definitely got progressively worse as I got older.
Thank you. That's a perfect answer. Can you name a belief you held during that season? Something about your worth or your future that you had to dismantle?
Wow. Yeah. The future was something I could not handle back then. I remember when my son was first born, people would ask me regular questions like, when are you going to have him go to school? Whoa, what is he going to do for this activity? Blah, 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 this and that. I would get so overwhelmed because the future, I could not even think about what that was because I was struggling like day to day, especially when I was a single mom. So the future was something I did not want to talk about. It was very scary for me. I was able to stay present, but not in a like healing way. I was present in that, focused on how crappy my circumstances were, focused on being stuck. I was so focused on being stuck. And so I was present, but present in that I felt like I was always going to be stuck in this state of like desperation and like hopelessness and helplessness. And my self-esteem wasn't the greatest because I had just ended an abusive relationship. I was not the abuser, let me be clear about that. I was the survivor of that. But to answer your question, I was present, but not like I am now. Now, when I'm present, it's peaceful. I feel free. I feel happy. I feel joy. Or even if I feel present in sadness or anger, it's easier for me to process it and kind of move past it.
Okay. I like that. Thank you for that answer. Thank you. Let's go ahead and pivot. You were speaking about, your son. We won't mention his name, but we will mention the middle name, which is, would you like to say it?
Yep, it's Gabriel.
Gabriel. So,
Yep.
that pregnancy wasn't just a biological experience, it was a spiritual warfare. What carried you through those moments of isolation and fear? You named your son Gabriel. What was that? What was that period like for you?
The name Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, is that's just for me like a sign of protection. Certainly during my pregnancy, I almost miscarried my son because his father, who was being abusive, also decided, well, I'm not going to try to help you get these extra hormones so that we can maybe escape a miscarriage. I was living in a different state from my family. I had a lot of good support at my job at the time, but for the most part, it was just me, my baby, and God. And because I was not able to get those hormones, I literally had to just pray and have faith that if it was meant for me to be a mom, that God would make a way for that. I had had 2 miscarriages prior to that. So you never prepare yourself for things like that. However, I knew if that was the direction that God was going to have for me, because I had survived a suicide attempt, alcohol poisoning, a sexual assault, 2 violent relationships, and a bunch of other things. I knew if I'm going to have to travel a rocky road and lose my son, I'll be okay one day. I don't know when that will be, but I know that if that's God's will, then I'll figure it out and I'll heal and I'll survive it. But in the meantime, all I could do was just pray and, hope that God and I had the same plans. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, did motherhood feel like a return to self or a total rebirth?
I would say a return to self. I'm not going to say a total rebirth because I was thinking the other day, and although I've had chronic stress in my life, I've had several traumatic events that I've survived, there were bright spots throughout those years. I can remember times I took a road trip to Miami one time by myself. That was like so exciting. I kind of used to hang out with friends and get out of the house and do this or that. So knowing that I've had those moments of joy kind of makes the harder times, I don't know, not as hard because you know that those moments are possible. And I went off on a tangent, so I totally lost track of what question I was answering.
No, did you return to self? That's
Oh,
what we
that's
were
right. That's
talking
right.
about.
Return to
That's it.
self.
That's
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I did. So the reason I don't say rebirth is because a lot of who I am today has never changed. I've always been sassy. I've always wanted to speak my mind. I've always been very independent. So a lot of those positive, healthy things have always been there. They just were hidden. So it was more of just like a reawakening of some of those things, but also trying to navigate relearning how to stand up for myself, how to love myself, how to trust others. So it was more of a reawakening than just, I'm not reborn into a new person per se. I'm like an improved and evolved person from who I was back in those times where I could be like carefree and happy.
An upgraded version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yep.
It's just an upgraded
Yeah.
version, like
Yeah.
Microsoft, Google, they
Yep.
upgrade. So
Yep.
you've been upgraded.
Yep.
I want you to paint this picture for us. A quiet moment, just you and your son, no audience. What does that moment say about the woman you've become?
Well, I've become a lot more patient. Uh, well, you have a puppy, so you know when you're caring for something or someone
Within
who,
yourself.
yep, who's learning, you have to have an extreme amount of patience. So that has definitely developed. And something that's like really interesting is when I'm with my son, I'm able to like have my guard down. I'm able to not really care what anyone else thinks. And it's because I teach those things to him, but he has to see me model those things. So I really think I have like the most intention and mindfulness when I am with my son in terms of just being me. Like my son is obsessed with cars ever since he could walk. So a lot of times he will drive an imaginary car when we go for walks. And so he's has like an invisible steering wheel. So I'm walking through town with a little kid who's got his arms up like this and people are probably
Right.
like, what in the heck is going on there? And the old me would have been so embarrassed and would have been like, let's not do that over here. We don't want people looking at us because of, those old wounds and the social anxiety and all of that stuff. But when I'm with my son, I don't want my wounds and my trauma to shadow his childhood and make him miss out on really just being a carefree kid. So if he wants to walk around with a mismatched outfit on, I'm within reason and based on the context, I'm not really going to say anything. I want him to feel free. I lived in such like a sheltered environment. Now, my parents, they let us express ourselves, but I know that I'm doing for my son an even bigger favor by letting him express himself, but let that be him and not let that affect me in terms of who cares if he's wearing, an all pink outfit and like a weird hat. Like he wore a winter hat in the middle of 80-degree weather a couple weeks ago. But he thought it looked cool. I asked him, he's like, yeah, I saw it on TV, but it's okay. He thinks that's cool. I think it looks weird. People might think it's child abuse because he's in 80-degree weather with a fur hat on, but he's living his best life. Like he was having the time of his life, So I just love being a mom. It's changed me a lot. Like given the amount of anxiety I have, it really has calmed down to a certain degree being a mom, because if it doesn't, he would never leave the house. I'm telling you, when we had COVID, I homeschooled him. We were together all the time. And I really got used to that. But I'm like, I can't, I can't be like, yeah, I can't be like 80 years old one day with a bunch of cats and then my son's coming down from upstairs like, hey, Mom,
Right.
what's for dinner? You know what I'm saying? So motherhood is just amazing. It really is.
The way that you speak about motherhood and you smile when you talk about it, I could feel that. I could feel that joy that fills your life, you know. So let's take a shift. Let's take another shift because I'm a pivot. But let's take another quick shift. Let's talk about tools. Okay. Not the buzzwords, but the practices that worked for you. What grabbed your hand when you were in the dark?
Music. Music is a huge part of my life and has been ever since childhood. Like, I can remember as a kid hearing certain types of like instruments or music and get chills all over my body. I later learned that's like your happy chemicals releasing that causes you. And to this day, when I hear a good song, I get goosebumps, I get chills. It's like a physical sensation for me, and it really calms my nervous system. So music for sure. And then just being outside. If I could live in my backyard, I would totally live in my backyard. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think it's because I've been trapped in either life circumstances or when I was in those abusive relationships. I've been trapped. Like a couple of those relationships were so isolating that I was literally trapped in the house. I couldn't look out the window without being asked like what I was looking at. So now that I have that freedom to just go sit in the backyard, I sit back there for hours, just sitting there.
In peace, huh?
Yes, and I don't even like having the blinds closed or the front door closed because I feel trapped. I don't like to feel closed in. So finding ways to feel free has been like such a big tool for me. And then of course being outside, you can incorporate physical activity. Movement is so key when you're stuck, whether it's from mental illness or just a rough patch in life. Your brain needs you to keep moving forward, whether you brush your teeth, go brush your hair, go draw a picture, go do journaling. Even if you're moving for 10, 15 minutes, make sure that you're moving. And I'm not standing on a soapbox because I struggle, not so much recently, but I've struggled with really severe depression to where I couldn't get moving. So I'm not sitting here telling people, this is what you do, because I know it's hard. I know what it's like to not want to get out of bed. I know what it's like to not even want to go to bed because you don't want the next day to come because you don't know what's going to happen. So I'm speaking from experience that no matter how hard it is for you to get up and get moving, please get up and get moving. Even if it's to go walk to the kitchen and go sit back down. Just, you have to move. You have to move and find those things that like bring you joy and peace. For me, it's music. For other people, it's karate or skydiving or art or just, that's where you have to have that inner child. Like, think of like that inner child. Like, what was your favorite thing to do as a kid? And I liked to play outside as a kid. We did that all the time. So a lot of the things I find joy in now were things that I loved as a child.
You said mindfulness, get up and move. Movement is very, very, very important. Journaling. What surprised you the most of all the healing tools, the music? What surprised you the most about those tools?
I think what surprised me the most is really like how much of a release it is for whatever pent up worries or anxieties or whatever you have. but you have to be intentional though with it being a release. Like you have to commit, like I'm writing this down or I'm going to blow some steam off. But once that release is done, we are then giving ourselves permission to keep moving forward. We've gotten rid of whatever that is. We revisit it only if we have to, but we release it and move on. You can't release something and just keep sitting in it, and you will. It can take practice for some people to release and move on. I'm one of those people too, because of my different attachment styles throughout life. It is hard for me to move on, especially in those situations where you don't get closure, you don't get apologies. You release it, but then you still have that resentment. Gotcha. So you got to release everything, and it's not going to happen in 5 minutes for everybody. Some people maybe can release and move on. Some people, it could take years, but just know that that's your journey. Don't compare your progress to other people. I used to do that. Excuse me. If I would listen to somebody's life story and they were saying how, oh, I'm on the other side and blah, 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 I would think something was wrong with me. Like, how come I'm not at that point? But that's because I'm not that person. I didn't go through what they went through. I have different tools, blah, 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 whatever it is. So you just have to, it can be a crapshoot sometimes, for lack of a better word. You just have to find what works for you, and it has to be sustainable. That was the number one thing that kept tripping me up in the past, I think, is I was doing releasing techniques that weren't sustainable for me. There's been periods of my life where journaling every day was not a sustainable thing. I didn't have energy to take a shower, let alone write about why I can't take a shower. You know what I'm saying? You got to find things that will work for you long term, because once you've done it enough, it becomes a habit. So then on those tougher days, it's a little bit easier to keep moving forward and using those tools.
So let's crack open a page. Okay. The journal page. Because you do journal. I heard you do journal. Okay. Yeah. What would the most vulnerable version of Caralyn write today to the woman sitting there right now?
What would oh my goodness. And I actually do this sometimes. I don't maybe always write it down, but I reflect on it. But I would tell myself, just good job. Good job, girl. Like,
words of affirmation, huh?
Yeah. I mean, there's just been so many times I almost did give up. I almost died. From not being able to heal properly and not being able to process things. So I would just honestly just give myself a pat on the back. And a lot of times I address my younger self, and I was a little girl who just wanted to be seen, but not seen for like the outside. I wanted to know that I was being seen for the inside, which I'm sure I was. I'm sure a lot of people maybe appreciated whatever personality traits I had or whatever, but I always say, to that little girl who just wanted to be seen and be heard, we made it. Like, we're here. People are seeing me. They're hearing me. Makes me a little emotional.
Because you're telling your truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your truth is very, very, it's sacred. The truth is very, very healing. Yeah. It's therapeutic. Yeah. Sometimes it's just, it's rude.
Yeah.
The truth is just depending on what it is, and that right there is a stage for all of us, just going through it and getting to the other end and really, really patting ourselves on the back, in which you said, because that's important. The encouragement goes a very long way when you do it to yourself,
Absolutely. I do it all the time.
Yeah, you have to, because there'd be so many negative voices inside of your head at times, and you have to ignore those negative voices, but they are loud at times,
Absolutely.
And to quiet it down, you gotta find something peaceful. I
Yeah.
know that works for me, but you have to find something peaceful to, you know, get at, you know, and
Yeah.
to step yourself out of the pain, which leads
Yes.
me into my next question, okay? Because now I want to talk to your pain, okay?
Yeah.
What would the first line of that letter sound like to you?
To my pain. That's a good question. I guess I think it would have to pertain to not needing to seek external validation to justify my pain, if that makes any kind of sense. Because I struggled so much with identity and self worth and self esteem, I learned, unfortunately, at a very, very young age, I need to find these things externally. So let me be the helpful child. Let me be the people pleaser. Let me be the agreeable one. Let me avoid confrontation. So I think that really impacted things, and it definitely has changed how I am moving forward. You have to look back and figure out kind of like, where do these things stem from? Because if you don't know where they stem from, it's like with any kind of ailment or situation, if you don't find the root cause, it's harder to treat it. And I was never really sitting and trying to find the root cause of why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, or why certain things would trigger me a certain way. So it's just, you have to have a lot of self-awareness and self-reflection.
What's one healing practice the world swears by, you know, but it just didn't work for you?
um I think probably like meditation. I have to do my own form of meditation, which doesn't involve like sitting. Well, I take that back. I meditate, but I can't sit and like and like listen to like bells ringing and gongs and candles and incense. I My meditation is sitting in my living room, no TV on, no computer on, no phone on, and just literally just sitting there. That's like my meditation. But the actual, like, probably scientific and like procedural practice of meditation, I cannot.
They're like little minions. Your thoughts are like little minions
Yeah, I was running
in a
in a circle.
conference. Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
constantly
totally.
running.
I can hardly fall asleep, let alone like force myself to sit there and like meditate.
Uh huh.
That's probably one thing that doesn't work for me.
Thank you. Meditation. Works for some, but it doesn't
Yeah.
work for a lot of people. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, have you fully forgiven yourself, or are there still layers unfolding?
There's still layers unfolding. Um, there's a lot of layers unfolding. The things I have begun to forgive myself for would be the role that I played in ending up in toxic relationships. And I don't say that to excuse what was done to me, whether someone cheated on me, I was defecated on in a relationship, I had a hand around my throat, I was called all sorts of names, I had stuff thrown at me. So having come out of, I lost my train of thought again
You were still,
with
you
what
were
you were
there.
saying.
You said there were still layers unfolding. That's where we
Yes,
were.
there's so many layers unfolding. So I have begun to forgive myself for the role I've played in my own suffering, as the saying goes. Because, as I just mentioned, I was seeking that love and acceptance and feeling worthy from other people. It didn't matter if they were like the jerk of the year, as long as they showed me some love and some attention that fed whatever I needed. It allowed me to continue to seek out relationships like that. Now, I was not interviewing people and picking like the crappiest guy ever. Like, okay, you'll do.
Right.
You're the worst one.
That's just what you attracted.
Yeah, it was like I was attracted to like the bad boys, but the bad boys that had like a story for why they got there. You know what I mean? That's their story to tell, but the abusive boyfriends, while their past and how they were raised did not excuse them abusing me, when I met them and found out those stories, I just had a lot of compassion and empathy that it was easier for me to kind of excuse being treated poorly.
Did you bypass any of the red flags in the beginning? Did you see the red flags in the beginning? You had to.
Now, okay, with my son's father, when we first started dating, we didn't live together at the time. In fact, we lived in two different cities. It was like 45 minutes apart, 45 minutes away, whatever. So he would want to stay on the phone with me like all night, like even if I fell asleep. Fix your face. Right. No, I didn't make that face. You know what I said? I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. That's so sweet. No, look, when I told my girls at work, they're like, girl, that is creepy. They're like, that is not cute. That is creepy as you know what. But so the red flags to me, because I, again, was seeking so much external validation and love, I was looking through, dirty goggles, like unhealed goggles, basically. The unhealed me was seeing those red flags as, oh, that's so sweet. He just wants to like hear me breathe all night. That's not sweet. And given at this point, I had my degree in forensic psychology, so I should have known better.
Right. It was just like what?
Yeah, it's just the red flags were green flags to me, to be perfectly honest with you. I will be real about that. And a lot of my problem was kind of like an unspoken, you don't ask, they don't tell. I would only ask so much about their past just to get a good handle on who they were, but I would stop because I was like, I don't want to hear, I wanted that love and that acceptance so badly that I felt I need to be in this relationship. So you can tell me the messy stuff, but let's stop at a certain point, because if it gets too messy, then I have to decide if I'm going to leave this person. And because I was so insecure and didn't love myself enough, being single was scary as heck to me. Because there was a time when I was just dating and dating and dating and not having periods of being single because I wasn't okay with being with myself. So yeah, so it's interesting, but a lot of the struggles and challenges I'm overcoming today were there in childhood and have not really been addressed until, like the last few years. So I can equate it to when you gain weight and then you try to lose weight. You have to look at how long did it take you to put that weight on? And then you might want to double that when you consider how long it's going to take you to shed that weight. Because even with mental health recovery, you plateau. You're in a spot where you're like, where am I? Which way am I going? It's the same thing. So the amount of stuff that I've been through from childhood up until the age of 43, there's a lot of things I'm going to have to keep working on. There's going to be things I'll forgive myself for eventually, but it maybe won't happen until I'm like 80. Because the stuff that the public knows about me, sadly or not sadly, that's only half of it. There's some other things that I haven't shared. Now that my son's getting older, I'm being a little more cautious with some of the things that I share. I will share everything at one point, and I think it'll probably be in a book, just because I don't know if I'm ready to share some of these things, on a podcast. You and I will have a discussion at a later time because we have some future plans. But yeah, and I'm more than happy to actually share these things with certain people. It's not like I'm trying to hide. If I could, I would blast every single horrible thing I've ever been through, but I have a son to think about, and he's getting older now, and I just don't want my healing to kind of interfere with his life. And I don't want kids. The stuff that I have not shared are things that would create issues for him in terms of kids being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's your mom. Now, I didn't kill anybody. It's nothing like that.
She's letting that be known. She did not kill nobody.
It's just, there's a chunk of about 8 to 10 years of a lot of stuff. But I keep like not talking about it and being vague, so I'm going to stop it there. But the point is, I have so many layers to unpack, and I don't regret much, but the one thing I do regret, and that I'm mentioning for somebody listening or watching, please don't wait to process the things that you've gone through. I'm not saying the minute you go through it, you go seek help or do whatever. Please don't wait. I really have lost a lot of years because of unprocessed trauma and unhealed things. So if you're out there and let's say you're in your 20s, even in your 30s, and you're struggling and wondering if it's time for you to seek, whether it's a therapist, talking to a friend, even writing in a journal. If you're questioning whether or not it is time to start the healing process, yes, it is. I'm telling you right here, right now, because if you're like me and you keep putting it off and say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, you can't make up for lost time anymore. I saw like the perfect example. I know people are not a huge fan of Dr. Phil. I don't support a lot of his political views, but when he had his daytime talk show, I learned actually a great deal from him in terms of like parenting and stuff like that. But he showed these people this huge line from birth until like your life expectancy. Then he had the people stand on the line for whatever age they were at. So I think these people were like in their 50s. He had them stand on that line and turn around and look at how much time had gone by. And then he had them turn around and look at what was left. And for me, as he would say, that was a defining moment. And I think about that on a weekly basis because it helps me stay on track with my healing. And I don't have a lot of time left. 40 years is a lot of time. I'm thinking I'm going to die in my 80s. Hopefully it's longer later than that. But when you look at what's left, that's really not a lot of time. It's not. And I'll be darned if I waste even another second not living the life that I choose to live and being the person that I choose to be. I know I just went off on a little bit of a tangent, but
no, you went directly into your truth.
I don't want somebody to ever regret waiting. There's never going to be the perfect time to start healing. There's not. I'm sorry. There's just not. Because guess what? When you do choose to start healing, some other boulder is going to come along. There's never a good time. The time's always going to be now.
Y'all hear that? Y'all see that? Right now. This podcast is happening for a reason. We're here with intention to let you all know that you are not alone in this. You don't have to go at this alone. There's people out here like Caralyn, like myself, and others that know the effects of our mental health and our mental well-being, you know. So get that help that you need. And I'm glad that you spoke about your son. So I'm going to use Gabriel, okay? In 10 years, if Gabriel was to listen to this, what do you want him to know about his mother's becoming, not just your survival?
Well, I would want him to know first and foremost, and yes, experts out there, I know you can't always be living for your children, but I'm sorry, I would want my son to know that 90% of the reason I'm doing this and really engaging in it is for him. It's for him. Because if I don't heal, how is he going to have a good shot at life? He already has a parent that is unavailable and is maybe not the best person for him to be around. So that's like strike number one. It's like, because of some of the choices I've made, I've already kind of set him up, not for failure, but I have set him up for possible future challenges. He doesn't have a father around. Yes, he has male figures in his life, so I've done that at least, but that's not his father. So I would just want him to know that I'm doing this for him, and that honestly, with faith in God, anything is possible. Everything is possible, actually. Not just anything. Everything is possible. The fact that I'm here and am in the state that I'm in is possible because of God. I could have took a way left turn in my 20s. I could have stayed in an abusive relationship and ended up dead. I could have stayed in a marriage teaching my son what an unhealthy marriage looks like. But I've made these tough decisions and made these tough choices, not only for myself, but to rectify to do some damage control, honestly. Some of these things I can't rectify. And I saw a video the other day of a man who was raised by a single mom. And this is something that I have come to grips with. It is entirely possible that no matter what I do, my son could grow up resenting me because he doesn't have a father around. And I've said that to some people and they're like, no, that won't happen. But I don't know that. I don't. I would have never thought as a child that I would have the relationship, which is kind of strained, with my parents. You never say never. So because I don't know what's going to happen with that in the future, all I can do is focus on today, be my best self, heal myself so that my son can learn to trust the world to a certain degree, so he can learn to have happiness, joy, peace, learn how to regulate his emotions, all those things. But he's not going to learn that until I learn how to do some of those things.
Can you share with the listeners and the watchers, what did your healing look like? I want to talk about the messy parts of healing, of your healing. What was those messy chapters that sometimes we go onto this journey and we just think it's going to be super easy. It's going to be chill. Whereas now it's awakening in so many different ways. I basically just want to know, what was the messy parts for you in your healing?
Oh, I will tell you. Actually, just last year, I made a mistake that really hurt somebody. Now, I am my own worst critic. When I mess up, I will tear into myself. I went into the bathroom, I closed the door, I looked at myself in the mirror, I did like a silent, like when you're really angry crying, and I said to myself, I hate you. Hold on, let me gather myself here. I did. I said, I hate you. You're such a horrible person. Golly, you're like not like a dog whisperer, but like a tear whisperer or something.
It's the truth. I'm feeling this. Like you are healing people.
Yeah,
right
but people
now.
have to know this stuff. When I'm healing, I'm not sitting like Indian style with like flowers and butterflies flying around and reading my Bible or doing whatever. It's times when you're locked up in the bathroom yelling at yourself and tearing yourself down so that you can build yourself back up. I'm not recommending that as a strategy, but it was a horrible, hurtful strategy for me to be using, but it's a real one. There's other times, there's been days I go days without showering because I'm so exhausted physically and mentally. I don't have the strength to go up and do that. There's been times where I've probably not had very many friends. Because there's been points in my life where I surrounded myself probably with like toxic friendships, and I outgrew those because I was growing. So the messy parts of healing look like treating yourself like crap, losing friends, being alone, wondering if there's ever any end in sight. Those are the messy parts. And days of just crying and crying, or just, beating myself up. Those are the messy parts. But though this is why we have to sit with those parts so that they don't keep coming up. I mean, no wonder just a year ago I'm telling myself I hate myself, given all the stuff that I'm coming out of. So when you have those ugly moments, though, don't jump back down the rabbit hole and then beat yourself up for beating yourself up. Because I've done that too. Afterwards, I was like, why are you talking? You gotta you can't let yourself spiral, but sit with those moments. Now, don't do it to the detriment of your well-being. If you're truly struggling, call for help. Call, there's plenty of hotlines, and you call friends, or if you know me, well, I don't give people my phone number, you can DM me. But yeah, just sit with those ugly, messy parts. And if they are ugly, messy parts like I just shared, know that that's completely normal. It's completely normal. I've even, I've told you I had a suicide attempt in my 20s. Certainly that was like an ugly part of the healing process. So we have to talk about those things. And I'm willing to cry and sob and share those things so that somebody out there who is like, oh my gosh, that happens to her too, or whatever the case may be, it's important that we don't feel like we're alone, because there are going to be times in the healing process where technically you are alone because you've outgrown spaces and people. But know that there's a bunch of other people out there who are also alone in that sense. So you're really not truly alone.
Talking about your friends, how you outgrew toxic relationships with friendships and things of that nature. Replacing the bad with the good, how has that empowered your life now?
It's just, I don't know. I just feel I still struggle with feeling good about myself, believe it or not. So I guess it's empowered me in a way of recognizing that I really am in charge of my destiny and my life and how things go. Like every day we all wake up and make choices. Some people wake up and choose to be shady. Some people wake up and choose to donate all their money to someone. Some people wake up and choose to just make it through the first 15 minutes of their day. It's all about choices. We have so many choices in life, and we need to make sure that we're making those choices for ourselves and not based on other people's expectations or what they think our life should look like. I've spoken to people about creating boundaries with my family. Well, don't you think you should sit down and talk to them? No, they're not. That's just not part of my process. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. I'm not wrong for needing to protect my peace even from family members. And I would like to clarify that me talking about my family challenges is in no way, shape, or form a retaliation. It's not finger pointing. And in fact, it's a retaliation against shame. It's a retaliation against pain. It's a retaliation against guilt, against low self-worth. So I just want to be clear that when I'm talking about my family, it's not to paint them in a negative light. It's part of my story. It's a part of my story. And being around my family gives me anxiety sometimes when it does. I come home from family vacations in tears every year. Just every year. I'm talking like the last few years. And it's because I don't feel like my genuine self is accepted there. And now they're not mean to me. They don't give me, you wouldn't know. If you would see me around my family, the stuff I'm sharing with you, I don't know if it would be that obvious. But I just wanted to make that clear because I don't want to devalue the good things that I did get, which I've shared with you before. I am extremely thankful to my parents for raising me as a Christian. I would not have survived most of my adult life if it weren't for my faith. I would not have come back to my faith if it weren't for my faith. So I appreciate that. I mean, even though survival mode isn't good, they've taught me how no one's coming to help you figure it out. That's an excellent thing to teach your children within reason. So I just wanted to make a point to kind of digress from the conversation and say that, because a lot of people who listen to these podcasts are people I grew up with. They're people who know my family. It's maybe even my own family, but I just don't want anyone thinking that this is not a separation because of really horrible, terrible things. It's because it's not an environment that is conducive to who I am now. Now, I do go around my family for the sake of my son. Those are his grandparents, his aunt, his uncles. But I do that for him. So it's a weird, I think everybody needs to learn that duality, the duality of life. You have to have the hurt to have the good. You can love your family to life, but have to separate yourself from them. You can be happy 1 minute and be crying. Look, I'm not crying now. I was just crying a few minutes ago and now I'm smiling and laughing. You can have that duality. Duality is normal. It's normal.
So would you say healing is continuous?
Yeah.
Or would you say healing is just I'm healed now and I could just live my life? Or is it continuing? Is it just keeps going?
I tend to believe that healing is continuous. However, there's exceptions to everything. And I'm sure that there are people out there somewhere who had like a great childhood and maybe only had one thing in their life that they had to heal from, and now they're fine. I mean, I'm sure there's someone out there like that, but I'm also a realist, and the bleeding heart side of me truly believes that there are a lot more people out there walking around hurting and unhealed from things than what they want to acknowledge, or maybe that we would even acknowledge. So
I want to strip everything else. Strip everything away. Okay? No platform, no podcast, no pressure. What is your definition of peace right now?
Oh, well, that's kind of a loaded question. Peace for me right now would be no financial worries, no haters on the outside causing drama. I'm at peace more so than I was years ago, but I do hope for the day where I can be at peace with some of the boundaries that I've put up. I feel my old self tugging on me all the time with those boundaries, like, oh, but that's your family. Oh, they've said such nice things, or you know what I'm saying? So I one day hope to be at peace with the boundaries that I've set. Now I am at more peace than I was the end of last year when I implemented these new boundaries. But I really am still, but you can't, honestly though, you can't sit around and wait for that either. You have to try to find it in the present moment, because I might not wake up tomorrow, and therefore I'm never going to have that day where I'm at peace with that. So I guess you have to be at peace a little bit with the things you can't be at peace with, if that makes sense. It's kind of like one of those agree to disagree situations. You have to accept that while I can't be at 100% peace with this right now, because life is short, I'm going to choose to be at peace with it as much as I can possibly allow myself to be, and still be evolving.
Well, thank you, Caralyn.
I feel like I talk in riddles. I feel like I've been talking
I
in
can
riddles.
go. You don't talk in riddles, because I understand
Okay.
what you're saying.
Good.
I understand from the family, the anxiety, the suicide. I understand what you're saying.
Good.
So
Good.
you speaking in
Good.
riddles
Good.
is not riddles to me or the listeners that is
Good.
tuning in, because they can identify
Yeah.
with everything that you have said on this
Good.
podcast episode. And I
Good.
want to say thank you, because I understand that timing is everything, and I want to be respectful of your time. But I also want to let the listeners and the viewers know that this conversation didn't just revisit pain. It reframed power. It reminded us that trauma doesn't erase who we are. It reveals who we're willing to become. My truth, healing is not about performance. It's about presence. It's about telling your truth so clearly that shame has no corner to hide in. Caralyn, thank you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your light. Thank you for your truth. Thank you for your motivation. Thank you for putting yourself in the forefront to confront the past with your truth. You know, where can our listeners follow your work and support your journey?
Well, I'm on all the major social media platforms. So TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Clapper. I'm also on Substack and Medium. Those are blogging platforms. Look, the world is going to find me whether they want to or not.
Or not, huh?
Ready or not, here I come. And then
And they'll find you by Caralyn. They'll
Yeah.
find you by your name. Okay.
Yeah, Caralyn Dreyer. And when I say this, I'm not saying it with a sense of arrogance, but literally if you Google my name, whatever things I've published, whatever platform I'm on, my mental health blog, Darkness to Dialogue, Living Well with Mental Illness, you can find all of it. If the main social media platform probably to go to would be Instagram, because that has links to all my writing and my little mental health videos that I make and all that stuff. So, but if you can't find me, we gotta talk.
You're not looking for me.
There's a crack I missed. I missed something if you can't find me, okay?
People can't find you. That just means they're not looking for you.
Yeah. And that's okay too. Some of y'all can stay not looking for me, okay?
Exactly. Boundaries.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So before we end, what would you want to tell the listeners out there and the viewers today?
Well, I would want to first use my signature sign off of please take care of your mental health, because that is so, 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 so important. But I think the number one thing is just stick with it. There is the light at the end of the tunnel that you hear about all the time. It is there. It is real. You can get to the light, but also remember that you are the light on your way there. Even though you're struggling, your struggle can help somebody. It can be a light for somebody else, but the light at the end of the tunnel is real. It is real. It might take you a little bit to get there, and it might be within your reach one day, and the next day it's 5,000 miles away again. Please don't give up. Don't give up. And this is from somebody who almost did permanently give up. Please don't give up. Whether you believe in God or you're just like a spiritual person or you have some other kind of religion, just whatever you use to fuel you, use that to not give up. Please don't give up. We want you to be here. You are loved. You're not alone.
And you guys heard that? I stand with that. That's my truth, and I'm sticking with it. So I want to say thank you for joining me on Druthfully Speaking podcast. And I hope that this message from Caralyn enlightened and inspired you. You know, what do I want to say? Honoring your perspective as you continue on your journey. So until next time, y'all take care. And this is my Druth. That's Caralyn's Druth. We're sticking with it. Bye-bye.